Mr. Nastri, maybe you can reintroduce for the audience the panel members that are here now, and we can get started.
Yes, Dr. Parker. So our next panel is the representatives of PBF Refinery and associated stakeholders with them. So we'll have a joint discussion amongst themselves as they present to us. So let me introduce the panelists. Mr. Jeffrey Dill is the PBF Energy President for the Western Region. He oversees the Torrance Refinery and the Torrance Logistics Company. He also oversees the company's West Coast commercial operations based in Long Beach. Mr. Dill has been with PBF Energy since its inception in 2008, and he previously served in a number of roles in the refining industry, including with Unocal, ConocoPhillips, and Premcor. Joining him is Stephen Steach, the refinery manager. Mr. Steach is a chemical engineer with over 30 years in the refining industry. He's served as refinery manager for the Torrance Refinery since PBF's acquisition of the facility in July of 2016. Previously, he was the refinery manager for ConocoPhillips in Billings, Montana, and he's held various positions in the refining business, beginning with Unocal. Also joining him is David Campbell, the Secretary-Treasurer, United Steelworkers Local 675. Mr. Campbell currently serves as the Secretary-Treasurer for the United Steelworkers Local 675 and as the Vice President for the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. He's a member of the Blue-Green Alliance California Steering Committee and a member of the UCLA Labor Center Advisory Committee, and previously served as a board member of Communities for a Better Environment and as a former member of the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance. Also joining him is Chris Hannon, Council Representative for the Los Angeles Orange County Building and Trade Council, AFL-CIO. Mr. Hannon became a union member after applying for an apprenticeship 22 years ago with the sprinkler fitters who install, service, and maintain the automatic fire suppression systems in buildings. The first 11 years in the union were worked in construction and service as an apprentice, journeyman, and then foreman. He's also served Local 709 as a delegate, apprenticeship instructor, negotiating committee member, vice president, and president. That is the panel, and I would ask Mr. Jeffrey Dill to begin.
Thank you, Mr. Nastri. Dr. Parker, Councilman Mitchell, Dr. Liu, thank you so much for the opportunity. We know you absorbed a lot of information this morning. We think we have a lot of information to share with you this afternoon as well. And let me just begin by responding to a few of the things you heard this morning, and then we'll get to our slide presentation. We fully recognize the refinery has to improve its performance and operate safely. Over 300 workers at the refinery live in the Torrance community, and many, many more live in the other South Bay communities of Redondo Beach, Palos Verdes, and elsewhere. Nothing is more important to them than the safety of their family, friends, community, schools, as well as their co-workers. We have met with Assemblyman Marisucci and pledged to work with him along with other stakeholders like the CUPAs and the AQMD on his legislative agenda. We are going to share with you the steps we've taken since July 1st last year and since the EPA inspection in November, as well as significant work scheduled over the next 3 months to correct the refinery's past performance and put us in a position to operate safely going forward. Some of the work we will review with you we would like to have accelerated, but because of lead time on equipment and securing skilled labor, we've been doing it on as expeditious a schedule as we possibly can. I believe Mr. Jenkins's comments on our progress on electrical reliability is evidence of our commitment to move forward as expeditiously as we can on the various initiatives in front of us. I'd like to speak briefly specific to the EPA preliminary findings that we heard this morning. We committed to the Torrance City Council to provide them with information on actions we've taken since the November inspection, as well as information on our responses to these preliminary findings. And along with the EPA, I would also stress they are preliminary. There is information available that was not readily available during the inspection that will be provided subsequent based on their information requests that we believe will clear up some of those findings. Maintenance on the equipment that was raised as a concern has been completed, and roles and responsibilities have been clearly communicated to our employees. The permit issue that was addressed earlier, that equipment has been in service for many, many years, and the concrete pit that is referenced in the report simply is a holding basin as materials pumped from there into a permitted tank. So any further regulatory requirements on that equipment are going to be cleared up with EPA through the subsequent information responses. Regarding the refinery's use of modified hydrofluoric acid, we stand by our prior statements that we're not aware of any other conversions in the United States from HF alkylation to a different type of alkylation. In the Bay Area, as far as we have been able to ascertain, each refinery chose sulfuric acid originally as the alkylation technology at their refinery, and that's what they still have today. The example cited by Mr. Jenkins, he noted gasoline production at that facility is 26,000 barrels a day. That facility, our understanding, is more of a petrochemical facility than a fuels refinery. The Torrance refinery daily produces approximately 100,000 barrels a day of carb gasoline, which has a greater need for alkylate. We are happy to engage with Mr. Jenkins, representatives from the Bay Area SCAQMD, or any others who have information about conversions from HF alkylation to other technologies. We would welcome the opportunity to get information about conversions that have been completed on fuels refineries, and we are happy to learn from those lessons to the extent they exist. We have advocated for everyone to keep an open mind on all the issues being considered during the district's comprehensive rulemaking process on the use of HF. Conversion by January 1st, 2020, as currently put forth in Assemblymember Marisucci's bill, is just simply an impossibility. It is absolutely impossible to engineer, design, procure, and permit to complete a conversion of any refining unit by January 1st, 2020. We provided the district with written comments on the Norton report. Norton did not visit the refinery during their study, nor did they contact us for information. Their cost estimate and time estimates were clearly stated in their report to be based on assumptions. And unfortunately, those assumptions do not hold up. The metallurgy in the hydrofluoric acid alkylation unit and other factors are not reusable in a sulfuric acid application. It does require the construction of a completely new unit, which will take much longer than their time estimate, and we believe costs 5 to 6 times the estimate they provided. Going to our slide presentation, as I've mentioned, we know our performance has to improve, and as Steve will explain further after my comments, there is a lot of work that's already been completed and a lot of work scheduled over the next 3 months to get us to a place where we are operating safely and earning our right to be in the community. On this first slide, I'd like to highlight one particular bullet point. Following one of the earlier incidents, we formed cross-functional reviews of safety-critical jobs. This is a new approach at the Torrance Refinery, and independent experts who we've brought in to help us with operations at the refinery have given us extremely high marks for this approach to this type of work, and we consider it to become a best practice in our industry. One of the keys to our operations since the acquisition is the forming of new relationships with our labor partners to engage them more fully in our efforts to improve. We know as management we have more to do on this front with the steelworkers and the other unions that work with us every day to make the refinery safer. We are the only refinery in California to have signed an agreement with the building trades. We view this as a way of more fully engaging with them, increasing the overall skill level at the refinery, and moving us towards safer operations. I'd also like to point out that one of the critical safety systems at the alkylation unit, the caustic scrubbing tower for the unit acid evacuation system, was replaced immediately following, or a few months following, our acquisition of the refinery. This was work actually that was supposed to be completed before our acquisition. It was the one thing we chose to do ourselves. That was completed, and that unit has run very well since that work was completed. The other thing I'd like to point out, and I know this receives comment by others in our industry and other industries, but we preach it. We not only preach it, but we walk the walk, and that is that if any operator or other worker at the refinery believes what they are doing is unsafe or are not sure of the task at hand, they can shut down whatever they need to shut down to make sure we remain safe. As you've seen this morning, we do not operate in a vacuum. There are many agencies with oversight over various parts of our operations. I know there was some concern expressed in the local press about the long-term future of the U.S. Chemical Safety Board. We respect their role, but they are not alone in their oversight of this refinery. We have plenty of other regulatory bodies who are at work to oversee what we do and help us protect the community. In that regard, along with the EPA inspection you heard about this morning, in the 7+ months we've owned the refinery, we've had 8 regulatory inspections of the refinery. In each one of these cases, we have fully cooperated with all of the regulatory agencies and their activities, including access to personnel, documents, and information requests. I've already commented on the EPA notice that we saw this morning, and I'm going to turn it over to Steve to talk more specifically about the actions we're taking at the refinery.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Steach, as Mr. Nastri said. I've been the refinery manager since July 1st, and I did finish my 34-year career with ConocoPhillips as the Billings refinery manager, but I have lived almost all of my adult life here in the South Bay and as a resident of the city of Torrance. I worked 25 years in Wilmington and in Carson with Unocal and in Tosco. As the Billings refinery manager, I had the pleasure of operating what was viewed as the safest refinery in the United States. And yes, we did have an HF unit, and yes, we were right next to the residence and downtown. And we did receive the NPR Distinguished Safety Award. So I do know what a safe refinery looks like and feels like. So I'll start with that. There's a question I'm sometimes asked: how do I know the refinery is safe to operate? Well, it starts with the people. The Torrance refinery workers and contractors, they're committed to working safely and looking out for their coworkers, their families, and their communities. And as Jeff had mentioned, quite a few do live in the local communities. And they take their safety home with them. If it's a warm summer day and you're driving down the street and you see a couple people mowing their yard, you might see one, that's the South Bay, so you might see one in flip-flops and shorts and a t-shirt, and you might see the next one wearing long sleeve, hearing protection, eye protection, long pants, boots. You can bet the second one works at a refinery, and I'm not joking. That's how serious the employees are about safety. On this slide, I've shown the OSHA recordable frequency, except for the refinery, because we weren't operating in 2015. I'm shown for other industries that you might find here in the South Bay. This represents, if you have 100 workers and they work a year, how many might be injured. And as you probably suspect, the emergency responders, the police and the fire are the highest on there. 10 of them out of 100 could be injured in a year. And I thank them for what they do. In the middle, you've got jobs like retail, construction, and government. 3 out of 5 out of 100 might be injured, requiring medical treatment or more in a year. Refinery industry in general is among the safest places to work. The job-related injury is, on average, 1 out of 200. And, is that right? Yeah, one injury out of 200 in a year. And then our actual numbers for the Torrance Refinery, I put them down there for our employees and our contractors. It's 0.17, so that means out of 600 employees, one might be injured. And that's, we had one person last year required medical treatment and was able to return to work. And our contractors, no injuries in our contractor workforce. So, personal safety is important, but that's only part of operating safely. You know, how do I know that the process is safe to operate? Well, if you think of this as a pipe with a process inside the pipe, it starts with every piece of equipment in the refinery has what we call a safe operating envelope, or OE. We have clearly defined maximum and minimum temperatures, pressures, and other conditions. All of those are continuously monitored. The signal goes to a central control room. The limits are clearly defined. They're alarmed with a pre-alarm to alert the operator if he needs to make an adjustment to the process. If the condition approaches the safe operating envelope, there's an alarm. And then there are shutdown systems which will keep the process within the safe operating envelope. But then you might ask, how do we know the equipment is substantial enough to contain the process at that temperature and pressure? Well, we have a mechanical integrity program. It's overseen by Cal OSHA. We have over 300,000 identified thickness monitoring points. For every single point, we've established a corrosion rate and either a reinspection or replacement date for that piece of equipment with significant safety margin, really a 50% safety margin. We have to reinspect it halfway to the replacement date or replace it. And I'm happy to say we are not overdue on any of those inspections. Well, what happens if something goes wrong and we approach those safe operating limits? The operator isn't able to make an adjustment. Well, we have safety devices. On the slide, you'll see we have pressure release devices. There's over 2,500 relief devices that are set to keep this equipment within a safe operating envelope. And I'm happy to say none of the testing on that is overdue. It's all required testing frequencies. And then we have almost 1,600 critical safety devices that will automatically shut down portions of the process to keep it within its operating envelope. So the refinery is safe to operate because we have the safest workers in the area. We keep our equipment within our operating envelope. All our inspections are up to date, and all the testing of our critical safety devices are up to date. And these systems have worked flawlessly when we've needed them. This is a dashboard we use to show really the PBF leadership how we're doing on reliability. If you look at the upper left-hand corner, our vessels and piping are doing very well. Like I said, all inspections are up to date on our mechanical integrity program. On the upper right That's our rotating equipment. We are average on the industry. Our runtime between repairs on our pumps and compressors is right at 5 years. That's the industry average. The lower right corner, as I mentioned, our relief valves and critical safety devices are very good. All the inspections are up to date. On the lower left, not surprisingly, that's an area we need to improve, our electrical reliability. We have made some improvement after the power failures that I'll talk about a little bit later. We've worked out protocols and improved our working relationship with Edison. And we have not had another power failure, but we know that if we do not do this electrical reliability project, we will. So we need to complete that as quick as possible. I will say, I guess, in response to the concern about what if we take some of these critical safety devices out of service, like the ALKI was brought up in the audit, the EPA audit. Well, first of all, I'll say in November, we shut down the ALKI and we had to restart it up after that audit. We tested every single one of those safety systems and they were all verified to be working, and we've continued to test them. We have what's called a control of defeat policy. If we have to take any of these critical safety devices out for maintenance, we put a procedure in place with mitigation steps until the point that they're returned to service. We have had too many events, as Jeff said, since July. And while the reporting on these has been inaccurate at times and sensationalized, we do need to improve. The second week I was on board, a computer software glitch shut down one of our units and it cascaded to 2 others. We made changes and that hasn't happened again. In our first 4 months, Southern California Edison caused 2 power failures that shut down the refinery. As I said before, we're now working closely with them. They're coordinating with us and we're coordinating with them. We get advance notice on all of their work. Anything that's going to affect us, they allow our engineers to come in and run through it to make sure we're comfortable with it and vice versa. They've been flexible on rescheduling work around our needs, and we've done the same. Last November, we had a fire while replacing some piping. As Jeff mentioned, we changed our review procedures with these high-level cross-functional review, and we changed some people out, and that hasn't happened again. There were heavy rains this winter. In February, we had a sinkhole. A lot of people did. This sinkhole damaged our main drain line, which runs under Crenshaw. So we were able to repair that without closing Crenshaw. But in the process, air got into our drain system. Our drain system has oily water at times in it in addition to water. And static electricity caused a fire in an underground concrete drain box. This particular incident was late at night. There was no visible flame or smoke. And our responders quickly put it out, but it got publicity, a lot of publicity. But that's an example of some of the things that get reported that people don't really know what happened. On February 18th, we had a bearing fail on a pump. The operator responded immediately, went out there. By the time he got out there, the pipe connected to the pump had begun leaking before he could shut it down, and it had ignited, so there was a fire. He quickly put the fire out, and our emergency response team quickly put out the fire. I have to compliment our volunteer emergency response team in the refinery. In all of these incidents, they've responded quickly and professionally, and they've quickly and professionally addressed the situations. And I have to compliment our workforce. They've learned from these events, and they have not happened again. And I'd also like to compliment the Torrance Police and Fire Departments. We have what's been described as a model relationship between the refinery and their department. We're 100% open, transparent, and honest with them. We report anything and everything. A 1-minute flaring event, a 1-drop leak. And I guess it was reported earlier, I'll correct one of the slides about how to notify the community. It showed one refinery with a social media alert system. Well, we have a social media alert system. It's called the Torrance Alerts. We report anything and everything to the Torrance Fire Department, and they've been, to their credit, very open and honest with the community. They've been sharing these things that are not reported by any other refinery that I know of. This CalARP regulation that they've talked about, that will move the other refineries closer to where we are today. But be aware, we report things that no one else reports, and sometimes those things get reported inaccurately and sensationalized by the media. We have many operating strengths that we can build on. We've got a great workforce. We've got good teamwork. Our reliability programs are strong, as I said, with the exception of electrical reliability that we're working on. Management team's engaged. Our employees are engaged. We've got the full support of PBF behind us. And we've got a strong partnership with our unions here. United Steelworkers, they operate our refinery. The USW and the IBEW provide our in-house maintenance. And we're the first refinery in Southern California to use 100% building trades for our contract maintenance. The building trades have a best-in-class apprenticeship program. They provide well-trained and highly skilled workers. They're our partners, and they give us an advantage in skill and quality over the other local refineries. Over the next 2 months, we'll be shutting down many of the units in the refinery for cleaning, inspection, and repair. The previous owner, they shut down, cleaned, inspected, and repaired the two units that were down because of the EXP explosion. But the remaining units, those shutdown schedules were extended into this year until after we took ownership. So we've been planning these shutdowns since July 1st. During these shutdowns, we will open, clean, inspect, and repair over 1,000 pieces of equipment at a cost of well over $100 million. We'll be using California building trades for most of this work, and some of the trades from outside the state. The work will significantly improve the reliability of the refinery, and we're asking the AQMD for a little help. We need approval to take one of the flares out to replace the tip, because that's how the permit's written. We cannot maintain the flare without approval. And we also are asking for approval because we may have to vent some hydrogen, 99% hydrogen. We may have excess hydrogen during the shutdown. And right now, unlike the other refineries I've worked at that have hydrogen plants that produce 99% hydrogen, we do not have a hydrogen event that goes to the flare. It's not a pollutant, not a greenhouse gas. It actually causes pollution going to the flare, and it causes, when we get to the flaring, I'll talk about its impact on the flare alerts and the flaring we've had. After completion of this work, we'll be looking forward to a long run of safe, reliable operation. Rule 1118 regulates refinery flares. I understand that flares are safety devices, but we're fully committed to minimizing flaring. On the previous slides earlier in the morning, it showed the tons of, it had it at a different metric, but it showed the SOx emissions for 2006 for all the refineries. And you saw Torrance Refinery stood out. The range on that for the other refineries on an annual basis was some were less than 5 tons and some were more than 20 tons. These on our slide are actual reported emissions for when we ran the refinery from July 1st to December 31st. Our reported flaring was 15.6 tons of SOx. On the green on the bottom is our actual estimated data was only 3.3 tons a day. So the biggest factor here is 12.3 tons of substituted worst case data. Now, why is that? Well, the meters that are currently on our flare line, they're located at the wrong location. They're upstream of the liquid knockout drum. So the liquid causes the drums, the analyzers to be out of service for maintenance frequently. And when they are, we substitute worst case data. So we need to address that and relocate the meters or put new meters in. And this hydrogen, when we have to put that hydrogen to the flare because we don't have a vent, it causes the meters to be out of range because it is so light. And it also, like I said, it causes emissions because it takes with it anything that's in the flare line, and when you burn the hydrogen, it'll burn to water, but it creates NOx too. So that hydrogen should not be in the flare. It should go to a vent like every other hydrogen plant I've operated. Let's see. These projects, we do those, we'll be among the best, or at least at the top of the pack on the least flaring. With the exception of power failures, we have to complete that to really get to where we want to go. We've mentioned the electrical reliability project. This isn't a new problem. It's been there 30 years. SCE and the previous owner, they were never able to agree on a solution. I started working with SCE a year ago. It's one of my first calls when I came on board with PBF to build the relationship up. And we thought we would have more time to work this problem, but September and October changed that. So we've developed a very good working relationship. We've looked at many options and agreed on a plan that will significantly improve our reliability. And the AQMD has approved it. I thank you for that. The City of Torrance is helping with permitting. I thank the City of Torrance for that. It is a two-phase plan. In phase one, we'll supply the refinery directly from their more reliable 220,000 volt system with 2 new underground cables that will connect to a new switching station on our property. That will be Edison's extent of their system. The refinery will construct the switching station and tie that switching station into the existing infrastructure owned by Edison. That will have a significant improvement, but that's not enough. We would still have the older system inside the refinery. So then we will construct a brand new modern electrical system inside the refinery, and as quickly as possible, when the units come down for their shutdowns, we will tie them into the new system. You know, our new system is going to be designed with armored cables, modular switch rooms protected from the elements, so no raccoons get in, or no balloons, no fog. Highly reliable blanketed switchgear, gas blanketed switchgear, double redundancy so we can take the system on, keep the refinery working and work on the system. We estimate that that'll eliminate over 90% of our power dips. I will say we have had power dips since last October, but everything has worked properly and the refinery has not been impacted. You just don't hear about them, but there have been issues and the systems have worked. This project will cost in excess of $50 million. It's ambitious, and it's a long-term commitment to safe and reliable operation. Thank you.
Good.
My name is Dave Campbell, Secretary-Treasurer for Steelworkers Local 675. We represent 2,000 refinery workers in the South Bay area, from Phillips, PBF, Tesoro, and Chevron. I've been in office for 22 years. I think I'm fairly well known among activists, community activists in the community too. And the prior management, ExxonMobil, as a lot of you know, I had a great deal of difficulty with them on issues of safety for both the workers I represent and for the communities. And in fact, I did confront them on several occasions. Having been in office for 22 years, I've also had an opportunity to work in the past with both of the gentlemen to my right. And in contrast to top ExxonMobil management, I find PBF management to be honest. I don't always like what they have to say to me, but they're honest. They're direct, and they're very practical people. I want to point out that as a result of the Chevron fire and release in 2012, the governor established the governor's interagency task force on refinery safety. And our union, the building trades, the employers, and other stakeholders have been working through that process for almost the past 5 years. That process is about to conclude with the introduction, the beginning of next year, with new process safety management regulations that are the most advanced refinery regulations in the country. Among the, and I'll also be submitting written comments to the AQMD from the Dr. Mike Wilson from the Blue-Green Alliance in regards to the details of the process safety management revisions that we think are going to greatly increase refinery safety, not just at PBF, but in all refineries in the state. We also think that these process safety management revisions address all of the root causes that have been identified in Chemical Safety Board reports about accidents which have occurred in California. An example is the inclusion of what's called a damage mechanism review in the process safety hazard analysis portion of the procedure. If that review had been conducted at both Chevron and at ExxonMobil, we do not believe that those two accidents would have occurred at all. The new process safety management standards put the emphasis on prevention. So it won't any longer be a matter of putting the emphasis on control or mitigation, but it will be prevention. I want to conclude my remarks by saying the steelworkers' independent analysis, independent of the company, we agree that the cost of a sulfuric acid conversion for HF acid in this particular facility would be on the order of 5 times what the Norton study says. So we do not believe that that is a feasible option. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Hannon. I'm the council representative for the Los Angeles Orange County's Building and Construction Trades Council. Our Building Trades Council represents approximately 140,000 of the highest trained, finest skilled craftsmen and women anywhere in the world through 47 affiliated organizations. 43 of those are local unions, 4 of those are district councils. Many of my brothers and sisters are here today. Training is what sets the building trades apart from any other workforce in the construction industry. Collectively, we spend over $1.3 billion a year on training, over $200 million of that here in California. We have a new workforce agreement with the Torrance Refinery and PBF to have every one of the construction contractors doing work in the refinery utilizing the highest trained, finest skilled craftsmen and women anywhere in the world. And I don't say anywhere in the world lightly. We have affiliation agreements and we're working in cooperation with trade unions around the world to help them with their training. Although apprenticeship didn't start here in the United States, over the last 100 years here in the Los Angeles area, we've perfected it. We operate off a different model. Our members, their union on behalf of their members, the contractors, tackle training together. We do that in joint labor management apprenticeship training programs. We have journey level training for members beyond. We're not the cheapest, we're simply the best. Our members live and work in this community. The building trades has a history of supporting not only safety in the workplace, but for safety for the environment. Because of quality boards like the Air Quality Management District and other regulation, we manufacture and create products here in California safer than any other place in the world. When businesses leave this area, and businesses do have a choice to leave the area, like McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, Toyota, they go to other areas, some other areas in the country, sometimes outside of this country, and products are not produced with the same quality, not only for the product, the worker, and the environment. We can do the best job here producing products for our community in California because let's be honest with ourselves, our lifestyle habits do not support total bans on industrial chemicals. I see many people for and against the Torrance Refinery using mobile devices. Hydrofluoric acid is used in the production of products for mobile devices. It's used in medical devices. When we go to the hospital, medical device manufacturers use hydrofluoric acid in not only the development but the manufacturing of some of those products. You know, when I pulled into the parking lot here this morning, the parking lot was full. We do have to have an industrial base here. I can tell you when the aerospace industry largely moved out of the area, it had devastating effects on families, not only the families of building trades members, but families of engineers, of all levels of employment. When Toyota moved out of the area, there were families displaced. You know, mothers and fathers having their children moved to Texas and now won't be able to attend their grandchildren's soccer practice, baseball games. And finally, when Boeing chose to largely move out of the area, my own sister lost her job here. And, you know, the Rust Belt, there's areas and there's families desperate in the Rust Belt of this country, and that's largely from industry moving out of the area. We need regulation, and the building trades has had a long history of supporting regulation, but we most certainly cannot make an across-the-board ban of one of the key components that's used in a safe manner at this refinery and expect not to have consequences on lives. Many of those consequences come in the form of unemployment, which leads to family problems, crime, dependence on narcotics, and our programs at the building trades are changing lives. We're producing the best construction anywhere in the world. We're taking in formerly incarcerated veterans, and we're putting them through the same programs that I went through over 21 years ago. And we invite any of the public, any of the board to come through and tour our apprenticeship training centers, our journeyman training, and we can attest it's the finest in the world, and we're open to invite you to come in and view those facilities as well. Jeff?
Thank you, Chris.
Jeff,
Sir.
we've actually gone almost double the allotted time. I would ask you to wrap up and then have questions from the board.
I can wrap up very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Nastri. Just very quickly on modified hydrofluoric acid, I will just say that this is something we've been working on actually since we even completed the acquisition, and we are following through on the 4 commitments we made to the City Council and to the community before completing the acquisition. On the next slide, I would just quickly point out to some of the comments Chief Cerna made about being able to have more freedom to share more information under our license with the manufacturer of the MHF additive. We're trying to set the record straight. You know, in the absence of information, people will assume the worst. We get that, we understand that. It's our job to get out there with the facts. And we put an example up here. Along with the example that's on this slide, I would just point out that in addition to the samples we provide to, or the sample results we provide to the Torrance Fire Department, we do have, as a result of the AQMD's review of the project when this unit was modified back in the early 90s, we do have a mitigated negative declaration in place with the AQMD, which is publicly available, that does set our additive, the minimum amount of additive in our HF at 8%. And so we are always in compliance with that, along with the other items in the consent decree that Chief Cerna spoke about. Look, it's not just about jobs with the refinery. It is about our overall role in the Southern California economy and actually in the region's economy. Mayor Fury on Tuesday night told me about something I had never heard about before, but apparently there was a RAND study done during the partial shutdown of the refinery under ExxonMobil's watch after the explosion, and it was found that the impact of a partial shutdown of the refinery on the region's economy was $7 billion. So we do think we play an important role. We know there is absolutely no substitute for us operating safely, reliably, and in an environmentally responsible manner. That is what it's all about. That's what we have to do to earn our right to do business in this community. That's what we're committed to doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have, the other board members probably may have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I have one that it seems to me that I think you stated the most vulnerable area of non-compliance is in the electrical area. My question is that since you had a complete shutdown because of no power, what about backup? Do you have backup now, power? And if you do, what period of time itself do you have, and what is it? Is it a cogen system, or is it some form of universal power supply system that you would have to continue the operation? Because part of, it's my understanding, the flaring is that if you basically have a complete shutdown, you have to immediately resort to flaring.
Right, so thanks. I'll take the question. Steve, jump in if you want to add anything. So let me answer your question a few different ways. First of all, in the event of a power failure, we do have backup battery power for critical safety devices. So for instance, safety equipment in the alkylation unit is equipped with backup battery power to sustain those safety critical devices during a power failure. There's a second layer where we have, I think it's about 40 megawatts of generating capacity within the refinery. So we utilize that 40 megawatts to also try to keep boilers online, other critical equipment sustaining. And as Steve mentioned, we've had a number of power dips from Edison since the October power failure, but through, I think, better awareness, better training, better coordination with Edison, we've been much more successful in riding out those power dips, utilizing the equipment we have on site and our procedures so that we don't end up having to go to the flare, or at least as significantly as we did in the past. All that being said, when there is a complete and total power loss to the refinery, we do not have the ability to avoid having to depressure some of the units to the flare. There's just no other way to do it. I think that would be true of any refinery in Southern California. We did consider, and district staff certainly brought up the issue leading up to the abatement order as to whether developing additional generating capacity on site might be an alternative to help mitigate the consequences of Southern California Edison's system. What we determined was, I think, both from an environmentally responsible position as well as just an expedience position, that by connecting directly to Southern California Edison's 220 kilovolt grid, rather than taking power through their substation on 66 kV overhead lines and not having to build another power generating facility in Southern California, adding those emissions to the environment, and quite frankly, having to wait for a longer lead time, that connecting directly to their 220 kV system would give us better, if not equal, reliability and be a more environmentally beneficial solution.
I'll give this short answer. The refineries that have major power production, the issue isn't the fact that they have the power production, it's that they tie in at the large producers, voltage 220,000 volts. Those insulators are much longer. There's much more safety margin. The breakers are much faster. They operate in 1/5 the time of the 66 kV. So they just are not subjected to the upsets that like us operating on the 66 kV.
So what you're saying is that if your system went down now, is that how long would you be able to operate without flaring?
I'll let you take that.
If there was we're designed right now to run through a PUC for 66 kV, the breakers are supposed to open in a half a second. If those breakers open, to correct the fault, we're fine. We might lose a couple pieces of equipment. If you have what happened before where they don't open and the dips are multiple seconds or 26 minutes, all the pumps and compressors go down and will flare. So we need to be on a reliable system, and we need to be able to have a reliable steam production so that we can put steam on the flare and not smoke.
So the answer itself is approximately 26 minutes.
No,
Well,
I think, well, go ahead.
No,
I know you said a half a second, but you said if it opens. So I'm assuming even if it opened,
Once you go beyond half a second, the motors start shutting down on the pumps and compressors, and then the safety valves start opening and flaring starts.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said,
Our backup battery systems and our on-site generation will help us sustain some pieces of equipment, but yes, we will need to start depressuring units, and we will be flaring.
The life, I guess, of the battery systems could be anywhere from a couple hours on the batteries to 24 hours. It depends on the load on the batteries.
okay. Board members' questions? Ms. Mitchell?
Yeah, I have some questions. And first on the electrical part, if you do connect to the 220 kV of Edison, how long, what is the timeline on that for you to get that project done?
Well, what we've been, we're in the permitting process right now. We'll know that in like 3 to 6 months, I think we'll know the exact timeline. It depends on what's required on permitting. Best case is 2 to 2.5 years.
So after you go through the permitting process, then we're looking at 2 to 2.5 years?
No, that's included.
Well, that includes the permitting
The total
process.
I would add too, while we're talking about electoral, I don't mean to interrupt you, but to add to Steve's answer, there have been a number of action items already implemented with Southern California Edison, and we are doing additional work pursuant to the abatement order, as Mr. Jenkins indicated. So we have been able to get Southern California Edison to change a number of their procedures, mostly maintenance work practices, and we believe that's one reason why we've been much more reliable. So there was a good deal of laughter at the city council meeting after the power failures when Southern California Edison reported that one of the reasons they shut us down was because of fog. Well, that is no longer a problem. They now actually maintain their equipment because, as you know, it does get foggy in the South Bay from time to time. So we believe they've changed their work practices to overcome that issue. The second power outage was caused by literally miswiring during some maintenance work they were doing at that substation. And so they've revised how they do that work to eliminate that potential cause as well. They also coordinate much, much better with the refinery than they ever have done before. We are notified of any potential work on their system that could have any impact at the refinery. And as a result of that, we can adjust our staffing, and we can even adjust unit rates if necessary if we think there's a risk of a dip in the power to our refinery, and we're in a much better position to react to that than if we're unaware of there being any susceptibility at the time.
Okay. I'm wondering about maintenance of your equipment because the preliminary findings from the Cal EPA, US EPA report showed there were some deficiencies there. So could you tell me what is your current method and how is that verified?
Sure. So let me just maybe make some preliminary statements, and I'll let Steve take most of that question. He's much closer to it than I am. Keep in mind, we bought the facility July 1st. The EPA inspection was November 1st. We recognized there were certainly areas of deficiency in the refinery that we wanted to attack. And like any other project that you're taking on, you're going to prioritize what you want to do and what you want to work on first. And so maintenance practices, we have brought in a new maintenance manager to lead that effort at the refinery. And we have caught up on all past due inspections that were outstanding at the time of the acquisition. I'll let you take it from there.
You're referring to the EPA audit, correct?
Well, that and in general.
Okay,
I mean,
'cause-
do you wait till a part fails before you do anything to replace it, or are you doing ongoing
No, we-
sort of inspections and?
I didn't put it on the slide. You know, our maintenance budget is typical with the other refineries. It's about half preventative maintenance and half reactive maintenance when something fails. I showed the pumps. We track the pump mean time between failure, and we predict when we need to take the pumps down. We obviously we had the bearing failure, so we didn't predict that well, but in general, we've done well. The EPA audit, I think it was referring to a couple specific pieces of equipment in the alky that were out of service for a few weeks to repair. I think one was a safety shower, and one was one of the cameras, one of the mini cameras we have, and it took a couple of weeks to get them repaired. Like I said, if it is truly a critical safety device, we use what's called the control of defeat, and we put some measure in to take the place of that piece of equipment being out of service. It could even be a person standing by around the clock until the part's repaired.
And could you just say what is the frequency of this inspection and maintenance program? I mean, are you doing it every 2 years or 3 months? Or?
It depends on the piece of equipment.
Okay.
Could be monthly, weekly, could be yearly. Yeah, we have what are called equipment strategies. So for each piece of equipment, we define the failure mechanism and we evaluate the mitigations and how often we need to inspect. We have a plan, for each piece of equipment.
And do you think that failures in equipment integrity have caused any of the fires or could cause future fires?
These incidents I talked about, I think there was the 3 fires I talked about, the 2 power failures. The bearing failure was a failure of a bearing. In retrospect, we're looking at our rotating equipment program, and we do rounds on those. We have technicians take vibration readings, and then we have a best-in-class, called System 1, ExxonMobil best-in-class vibration monitoring. It just so happens it was monitoring the radial vibration on this pump on the side and not the thrust. So when the thrust bearing, there was no pre-warning of the thrust bearing failure until the bearing failed and the pump began vibrating. And like I said, by the time the operator got out there, it was already leaking on the pipe that was connected. So we're looking at that. Why couldn't we predict that? Normally pumps don't fail, bearings don't fail like that. They gradually increase in vibration, and we catch those with our monitoring programs and shut them down proactively, and they don't have leaks.
So just using that as an example, when you have that kind of failure that wasn't anticipated, what do you do post-failure to correct those kinds of problems?
We do an investigation. In this case, PBF has several corporate experts. So we have I guess I won't say his name, but we have a corporate rotating equipment expert. He came out to help oversee an investigation, and we compare our, in this case, rotating equipment program with the other 4 PBF refineries. And a lot of us came from our competitors, so we know what their programs are. So we, in general, try to implement the best of all of that.
I would add we went through the records on every other pump in the refinery that could have a similar problem to make sure we don't have that. Steve's actually being a little bit beneficial here. There was actually, what the investigation team found is that one of the internal parts of this pump had a different metallurgy than the rest of the pump. And why that was specified by the prior owner or how that was done that way, we just don't know. And it was because of this one difference in metallurgy with one of the plates in the pump that the bearings failed, and we've gone through and checked to make sure we do not have that issue in any other pump in the refinery. I would also add that what's behind this slide that is not clearly evident is there are numerous standards and agencies that help guide us to these inspection frequencies and corrosion rates. So we use ASTM, we use API. There are many different factors we look at to help guide us in what those inspection practices should be, and we always make sure we're either up to industry standards or exceeding industry standards.
Okay, thank you.
May I jump in?
Go right ahead, Dr. Lowe.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff, for being here and providing us information. It's always helpful to learn more. One of the key things that came up this morning was in regard to the EPA preliminary inspection report, and it looks like the ball's in your court to respond to them. I know you've only had a few days with it, but obviously it's helpful to us if that gets resolved as quickly as possible. Do you have any idea how long it might take you to reply to them and get them the information they asked for?
Yeah, actually I spoke with them this morning and told them that we're going to cooperate fully and try to get this through this as quickly as possible. I would sort of break it down into a couple different categories. I think there were items noted, as Steve mentioned, there was a safety shower and a camera that were actually the particular pieces of equipment that they noted. Those issues have already been resolved. They were resolved right after the inspection. There are also then some what I would call paperwork issues, like the permitting of this subsurface structure where the API material goes before it goes to a tank. That structure's been there for decades. That system and that process is covered by permits, and they are looking for a specific permit to that specific piece of equipment. It doesn't exist. It's been permitted a certain way for decades. And so we will share with them the information we have, and whether or not a specific permit is now needed for that particular piece of equipment is something we can discuss with them. And then I think there are a number of interpretation issues as well. They admitted this calculation issue is sort of a new interpretation.
What I'm trying to figure out, is it going to be weeks, months, or as in case of Chevron, more than 5 years?
Look, we're going to get them the additional documents they asked for as quickly as possible and meet with them as soon as their availability allows. We have no interest in dragging this out.
Yeah, neither do we. I think maybe in an absolute ideal world, there'd be a very slim chance that we would be able to do something unique and partner on something, which is find something other than HF or MHF or sulfuric acid, and there seems to be a couple possibilities out there. I wouldn't ask you to do this, but do you think there's any possibility you might be at least willing to consider some alternative way of approaching this, and that there might be some slim chance or hope that we could actually do something very innovative here to solve this issue?
Actually, I thought a great comment. I thought a great comment this morning by Supervisor Hahn was how and when. And I think that is the question we all have, including PBF and the Torrance Refinery. And I think the rulemaking that will take place, that process, will help us determine the how and when. We have brought in a few experts, some of which you met the other evening, to help us evaluate the new and emerging technologies. We meet with Honeywell frequently. We are following very closely what's happening at the Salt Lake City refinery. So I think as new technology emerges, we are not a research and development company. Right. I mean, Chevron and Honeywell are making an investment in this technology so they can license the technology.
I know they want to make money, yeah.
Exactly. So
those research results, we've been told, I guess, by you guys that they are confidential and can't be released. Can we work around that? Because like you said, the presumption is worst case scenario unless you have the information, and I would really rather have the information than have to presume the worst case.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're not the ones making that claim of confidentiality. It's not our information to share. That's part of the problem. We've been working, trust me, very aggressively with Honeywell to get them to loosen the reins, so to speak, on some of this data. And as Chief Cerna indicated, we are making progress. They are going through all the information they have and selectively starting to sort of take the reins off what we can share, and we continue to have that dialogue and are going to continue to work to get more of that information available.
The last thing about the backup power, the 40 megawatts of on-site generating capacity, staff told me earlier today that they were informed that the current turbine is off-site for repairs. Is that true?
No, actually, I believe it was on one of the slides we showed. The gas turbine generator was returned to service, I think, a couple months ago.
Okay, so it
had some serious defects, I would say, and we had to do a lot of work with GE to make that, again, a reliable unit. But no, it's been online for a while now. It's actually been operating very successfully since the overhaul.
Can you operate it in the event of a power outage?
Not completely.
Not completely. Okay, so that is, and it's hooked up to the Southern California Edison system.
I'm not exactly sure if it goes into the refinery or out to their grid and comes back. That I'm not sure.
The system comes into two substations in the refinery. It's hooked up to one of those substations.
Okay, so you're still dependent upon Edison?
Yes.
Even to be
Yes.
able to run the backup?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, now,
Develop a question.
okay,
I didn't have a question, but have we talked to Honeywell?
We invited Honeywell to participate. They weren't able to make it.
Somebody needs to explain to Honeywell that they can keep it proprietary if they want to. But if a rule change here makes it useless, then in California, or in South Coast at least, the proprietary element of it becomes worthless. Somebody needs to explain that to them.
We will reach out and make sure they understand that, Dr. Burke.
Thank you.
I can tell you, I've had that conversation with their president.
It's a little different conversation coming from me
I
than
agree.
coming from you.
I agree.
But
I
I
agree.
appreciate that.
that's the chairman who's speaking. And I was really, after my years of experience in refinery, if you don't have a backup system in refinery, you really are at the vulnerability itself of doing real bad things to the environment. And if they don't let us know what that effect is going to happen with the modified HF, then we really are kind of operating in the blind that really doesn't serve everybody's interest. So I think that
Right.
needs to be explained to them directly because of the way that you are having to operate. Now we get on to the portion, go right ahead, Mr. Nastri. Oh, one more panel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We have one more panel. It's the community perspective. I'd like to thank the PBF panel and invite the community panel to step up to the dais. And as they're stepping up to the dais, we can do the introductions.
Thank you for indulging us on the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get it back at some point.
On the community panel, we have Dr. Sally Hayati. She's president of the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance. Dr. Hayati is a founding member and president of the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance. She holds a Bachelor and a Master of Science degree from UC Berkeley and a Master of Science and PhD in Computer Engineering from the University of Southern California. She's retired from the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo, where she was the lead on 2 commercial communication satellite programs, and she lives here in Torrance. Also joining her is Catherine Lays, co-founder, Families Lobbying Against Refinery Exposures. Catherine is a Torrance resident, mother of 2. She's the Director of Development at an International Human Rights not-for-profit. She's also co-founder of Families Lobbying Against Refinery Exposures, also known as FLARE, a 2,500-plus grassroots community group working to ensure that the Torrance Refinery is operating at optimal safety and transparency. And finally, we have Maureen Mock, co-founder, Families Lobbying Against Refinery Exposures. Ms. Mock is a co-founder, and she's a television standards and practices executive and former member of the PBF ExxonMobil Community Advisory Panel. She also is a Torrance resident and mother of 2. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Hayati.
Thank you. Can people hear me? Okay, good. Good afternoon. First, I want to thank the AQMD board and staff for being good listeners starting back in August 2015 and for taking action on our concerns. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you everyone who came here. I'm going to focus on the risk posed by the hydrofluoric acid alkylation unit. Is this mine? All right. Refineries are inherently dangerous environments. As we know, it's a tribute to the people who work there that it doesn't explode every day. And our refinery may have management and procedural lapses that significantly increase the risk. This is why the refinery's promise that we hear fairly often that no serious accident can ever happen is not credible. The consent decree safety advisor explained in his 1999 report that the vapor suppressant additive in modified hydrofluoric acid, or MHF, caused the new MHF unit to fail upon start of operations at the end of 1997. The safety conferring additive was immediately slashed to a bare 10% by weight, but the public was never informed. This sequence of actions does not inspire confidence in the competence or integrity of the industry. MHF is now 98% hydrofluoric acid by molecule count. So if you held 100 molecules of MHF in your hand, and don't do that, 98 of those molecules would be hydrofluoric acid, 2 would be the so-called safety conferring additive. How then can MHF be significantly safer than HF, as the refinery continues to claim? The conclusion of the TRAA Science Advisory Panel is that it's not. It's not significantly safer. In fact, it's not safer at all. The Chemical Safety Board calls the 2015 explosion a near miss on the MHF settler, and says a potentially catastrophic release nearly happened. Yet their investigation was blocked by the refinery, which refused to provide the requested MHF information, despite subpoenas and the DOJ involvement. The AQMD study of MHF alternatives, Norton, was also stymied by trade secret protections. But we've recently heard from PBF that, quote, risks associated with the use of MHF have been understood for decades. But who is it exactly that understands what those risks are? And what is the point of the secrecy? Because MHF is also protected by patents from any competitor. But our panel is not bound by trade secret agreements, so we performed an independent assessment of MHF using what's called proprietary data that's readily available online. And there is no absence of information. There's no vacuum. We have the information that we need from the industry itself, online from Honeywell, from Valero, which uses MHF, and so forth. Incidentally, we've heard TRC has dismissed our science panel as, quote, aerospace engineers with no refinery experience. So we prefer to think of ourselves as rocket scientists, but luckily, knowledge of chemistry and gas dynamics is more pertinent than refinery experience in this matter. So we feel that we're qualified to do the assessment. The refinery has also complained that we're using their patents as a source of data, and that's a dubious source, and which is interesting that their own patents are a dubious, well, that might be true, but any bias would be in favor of MHF rather than to the opposite. So all this discussion shows how useful trade secret rights are in protecting disputed safety claims from public scrutiny. We urge the AQMD and other authorities to challenge the granting of trade secret rights to MHF. And we are not comforted by the fact that Honeywell has decided to selectively release even more data. Any data that we have is freely available, and TRC has people paid to go and look at all our data online. They're going to selectively release their data, whatever appeals to them. But we welcome more data. That's fine. We'd like them to release everything. MHF is a patented technology whose sole benefit is a public image of enhanced safety, but which interferes with alkylation, and that is a dangerous combination. So, of course, HF is very dangerous, and people know not only because it's extremely toxic and a systemic poison, not just an acid, but it flashes. It's called flashing upon release, where 100% of it becomes airborne in a dense, ground-hugging aerosol cloud that moves with the air and can remain toxic for miles depending on how much is released. This is a picture of a test done in the Nevada desert. Our panel found that at 90 degrees Fahrenheit and 100 psig pressure or higher, MHF also flashes, just like HF. 100% of it forming a ground-hugging aerosol cloud. By the way, that is not the weather, that is the operating temperature of the unit itself, 90 degrees. By or and above 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the aerosol HF drops are small enough to move inseparably with the vapor around any barrier, because we never hear about it, but barriers are the second proprietary safety technology used, and the claim is that the jet hits the barrier, falls to the ground. Aerosol would not do that, and in their discussions, they acknowledge the fact aerosol wouldn't. They rely on MHF not flashing in order for it to do any advantage in dropping out the acid. So that gives a combined airborne reduction factor for MHF plus barriers of 0.0%. Nothing. To help judge the credibility of the refinery's MHF claims of safety, it's useful to share some of the EPA's recent report, the results discussed earlier, for its worst case scenario. So all of their findings in that regard would act to minimize the estimated MHF risk, everything that they've done that are irregular things. One, the refinery uses too low a release amount. They chose the MHF settler for calculations, but the storage tank has a larger amount. Furthermore, the refinery doesn't use the maximum amount of MHF that's in the acid settler at any one time. The refinery improperly takes mitigation credit up front for barriers plus MHF by reducing the release amount from 50,000 pounds to 5,200 pounds, thereby taking almost 90% mitigation credit for MHF plus barriers instead of zero. The refinery used improper and unjustified modeling assumptions to arrive at its 3.2-mile toxic distance, which the EPA report concludes has no apparent basis. By comparison, if you use the EPA guidelines table 7 to look up to estimate the toxic distance for a release of 50,000 pounds of HF, that table gives over a 15-mile toxic distance. That's the EPA itself. This hotel, by the way, is in that plume, which would have come if the near miss had actually been a direct hit on the tank. The refinery modeled MHF as a percentage of hydrofluoric acid, that is, diluted by water, instead of modeling it as anhydrous HF with no water, which is what HF is, MHF. Finally, the EPA points out that MHF mitigation credit should not be allowed for the worst case scenario, and is not, because MHF is an active mitigation measure requiring human and mechanical energy. The additive in MHF and HF become separated and must be recombined. Only passive measures are allowed. Disturbingly, there was inadequate management and maintenance in the MHF unit and improper implementation of operating procedures during HF operations. Transfers from MHF from truck to refinery were done, while HF emergency water mitigation equipment, alarms, and cameras were known to be not operational. The report documented inadequate and infrequent testing of critical HF unit safety systems and safeguards, including water deluge and electrical equipment. TRC allowed safety systems and equipment in the HF unit to remain unrepaired and non-operational on a recurring basis, sometimes for weeks. This is why mitigation systems cannot be relied on to protect our dense urban area from hydrofluoric acid. Systems may be damaged, malfunction, or fail completely. But even if mitigation systems work to achieve excellent performance, say keeping 90% of the settler's 50,000 pounds on the ground, 90% improvement, that still leaves 5,000 pounds of airborne hydrofluoric acid and nearly a 5-mile toxic distance using Table 7 worst-case conditions. The most and only effective way to mitigate risk from MHF is to get rid of it as soon as possible. One thing the EPA does not mention is that barrier safety claims, which constitute at least half of their safety claims, are based on the assumption that MHF does not flash, does not form that aerosol cloud, but it does. TRC has claimed that a quantitative risk analysis proves MHF is 25, 27 times safer than sulfuric acid alkylation. This claim is not credible because the QRA misrepresents the behavior of both MHF and sulfuric acid. Quest Consultants in 1995 did an independent release test of MHF mixed with hydrocarbons and of sulfuric acid mixed with hydrocarbons. This was the same scenario used in Mobil's QRA in 1994, mixed with hydrocarbons. But Quest's tests results show the opposite of what Mobil claimed. MHF did flash in this test, even though that was MHF with 50% additive. Only half HF. Ours is 90% HF, 10% additive. 100% of it became airborne in an aerosol cloud, including the additive. Sulfuric acid, on the other hand, did not become airborne, even with hydrocarbons, which Mobil and the safety advisor insist to this day means that sulfuric acid will flash, which is why it's supposedly 25% more dangerous. What little sulfuric acid remained airborne, about 2%, did so as a liquid film on hydrocarbon bubbles, and when those burst, the acid fell to the ground as a liquid. TRC's management lapses and misrepresentation of MHF risk is disrespectful to the local community, shows an indifference to safety, and we can't live with it, literally. Yet PBF describes the community response as emotional and hasty. We've been advised, the community has been advised, and the City of Torrance, to let the legislature and AQMD perform scientifically valid analysis and thoughtful review. But legislators and regulatory agencies are acting in response to community concerns and have requested continued support. Meanwhile, 2 days ago, PBF and TRC hosted an invitation-only, all quotes, hours-long lobbying event, inviting these same people that we're supposed to leave alone, seeking to influence decision makers and prominent community members. Residents are the ones under attack, not the refinery, and we are not going to be ordered off the field to sit on the bench. This is our community, and the refinery has not earned the right to do business in an unsafe manner that risks our lives and health. Thank you for your time.
Please, please. I'm going to inform the audience that we have to be out of this room within 2 hours from now, 2 hours and 5 minutes. We have 100 cards of people who want to talk, so when you interrupt, you said 4? Oh, 104 now. And I'm going to have to, when we get finished with the other 2 people, set a time limit that would give everybody an opportunity to be heard. But if you continue to interrupt us in this regard, we won't be able to complete that and have everybody heard. So let's proceed, Mr. Nastri, with the next presenter.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Catherine Lays is
wedding. Stay for the wedding? Or we could stay in the room for the wedding that's coming in.
I'm sure they wouldn't mind. And with that, Catherine Lays is our next speaker.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for allowing us to speak today. We really appreciate the opportunity. I will keep my end pretty brief. So we've heard from a number of regulators and refinery experts today, but it's also important to hear from the community, the people living, raising families, working, contributing tax dollars, paying rent, purchasing homes, and running businesses in Torrance and their surrounding South Bay communities. Flair is here today to help to present the community experience to the board. I will provide a 10,000-foot overview of recent events at the refinery, and then my co-founder, Maureen, will delve into more detail on community impacts, followed by a short video. So I've submitted a number of pieces of evidence to the board that will correspond with the series of events I'm about to discuss. So here we go. On April 11th, 2014, ExxonMobil and South Coast AQMD entered into a final executed settlement agreement under which Exxon agreed to pay approximately $22.6 million in relief for the refinery's failure to meter approximately half of its vent gas leading to its flares for a period of 5 years. Within the settlement, the refinery agreed to spend $7.25 million of the $22.6 million on flare mitigation projects. On February 18, 2015, the well-documented explosion rocked the South Bay, blanketing the surrounding community in industrial ash. The Chemical Safety Board, as we all know, labeled it a near miss. My children, along with many neighborhood children, over a mile and a half away, were out playing at local playgrounds and at schools when ash began raining from the sky. My own children asked me why it was snowing. There was a significant delay in communicating any kind of alert or shelter in place to the public. I personally was alerted to the explosion by an online Daily Breeze article at 10:15 a.m. We received a reverse 911 call at 8 p.m., nearly 11 hours following the explosion. On April 29, 2016, the South Coast AQMD levied its Rule 1118 cap of $4 million against the Torrance Refinery for sulfur dioxide emissions. On June 24, 2016, an email confirms that rather than use the $7.25 million in flare mitigation project money set aside under the final executed settlement agreement that I discussed earlier, Exxon instead opted to pay the minimum $7.2 million back to South Coast AQMD under a fallback clause instead of investing in those flare minimization plans. On June 20th, 2016, a 300-ton crane collapsed at the refinery, injuring 3 workers. On October 11th, 2016, the refinery experienced a large flaring resulting in 4.5 hours of black smoke and an emergency shelter in place for community members. A South Coast AQMD compliance officer issued a notice of violation to the refinery related to the black smoke and flaring on October 13th. On the community side, on October 30th, 2016, a proposal was submitted to the South Coast AQMD for use of the $2.77 million in supplemental environmental project funds. The proposal seeks a comprehensive and transparent refinery air monitoring, community education, and robust alert system. The proposal was submitted by a well-regarded third-party monitoring company with experience in executing South Coast AQMD and US EPA contracts, and included heavy community input and feedback throughout its formulation. This proposal received personal letters of endorsement from Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Congressman Ted Lieu, Assemblyman Al Mersucci, former Assemblyman David Hadley, FLAIR, Southeast Homeowners Division, TRAA, Environmental Priorities Network, Torrance and Redondo Beach business owners, an endorsement by Hermosa Beach City Council members, pediatricians, environmental engineers, South Bay 350, and hundreds of residents throughout the South Bay. We are anxiously awaiting the decision of the award of the Supplemental Environmental Project Funds. On November 15, 2016, a fire broke out at the refinery. Initial reports indicated that the fire was near the alkylation unit. On January 4, 2017, an unidentified quantity of naphtha was released by the refinery into nearby neighborhoods. Residents reported the odor infiltrating their homes nearly 2 miles away. On February 1, 2017, a fire broke out at the refinery's tank farm, reportedly in a pool of water. On February 15th, the refinery entered into a stipulated order of abatement related to the October 11th flaring event. The order details a history of flaring events related to power interruptions. Despite these repeated events documented back to at least November 2010, it was not until February 2017 that the facility finally agreed to work to review and upgrade the refinery's electrical supply. The initial review and partial upgrade is scheduled to take around 2 years, with a full solution taking approximately 9 years. On February 18, 2017, on the 2-year anniversary of the 2015 explosion, and on the day of a community march, another fire broke out at the refinery. On February 28, 2017, South Coast AQMD released data showing an estimated sulfur oxide emissions reaching an estimated 487 tons for the year of 2016 at Torrance Refinery. The number exceeds the total SOx emissions from the 6 other refineries within the South Coast AQMD jurisdiction combined. As discussed in detail by Sally and EPA earlier on, the US EPA released a letter on its inspection of the refinery, which occurred from November 1st through November 4th, 2016, which found significant issues with the RMP plan for MHF release. In addition, AQMD has issued 7 citations against Torrance Refinery Company since assuming ownerships. Violations occurred on July 11, 2016, October 11, 2016, October 26, 2016, October 28, 2016, November 10, 2016, January 4, 2017, and February 23, 2017. This list of events is not normal, it's certainly not exhaustive, and it's not acceptable for a refinery operating in such a densely populated community. As Glenn Jenkins, South Coast AQMD's expert witness at the February 15th hearing stated during his testimony, in my experience, oil refineries will only react post-incident. And that is why we're here, and that is what we're concerned about. I'll hand it over to Maureen to go into community impacts.
Good afternoon. My name is Maureen Mock, and together with Catherine Lays, I'm the co-founder of FLARE. We actually met at an AQMD order of abatement hearing exactly a year ago, where overflow crowds were gathering who lived around this refinery to talk under oath about the health and safety impacts and their children and families who were suffering. So hydrofluoric acid. When it comes to replacing the refinery's use of HF, we would ask that the board move forward with the plan to convert to sulfuric acid rather than stalling this project another 5 to 10 years to await the new technology. We understand and accept the risks associated with the use of sulfuric acid, as they are of minor consequence in relation to the catastrophic peril associated with the continued use of deadly HF. The citizens of the South Bay will no longer quietly accept the gambling of our families' lives by refinery executives, City Manager Leroy Jackson, Mayor Patrick Fury, and the majority of City Council. Not for 1 day, 1 month, 1 year longer. The attendance at this hearing is testament to that. Now, the refinery and its employing of its usual rhetoric and claims. They say that converting to a safer process would cost its workers their jobs. PBF management has passed along the rhetoric to their employees that if they are forced to convert, everyone will lose their jobs. Sorry, bro, SoCal is not going to be the next Rust Belt. Don't threaten your tradesmen with unemployment, family problems, crime, dependence on narcotics, parents not being able to attend their kids' soccer games. TRC employees, you should be asking your management what the refinery can be doing for your teams to protect your jobs and your town's safety. TRC workers should not be used as a sacrificial lamb in this debate. As we know, earlier this week, our federal EPA released the preliminary findings, noting the critical issues, inaccuracies, and miscalculations related to the HF alky unit and the worst-case scenario documentation. That very same day, the Torrance Refining Company encouraged their employees to don their blue TRC shirts, fill the seats at City Hall, and profess to the council that the refinery was a safe place for one to work in and live near. And on that very same evening, PBF's Western Region President, Jeff Dill, asserted that the mayor and the City of Council should respect the AQMD's process to make an informed decision on whether we can have a safe community and operational refinery or a ban on HF, stating, given the current state of technology, you cannot have both. He noted that a ban or phase out will cost more than the company's annual budget and that the technology is not there yet. The fact is, the technology is there. Jeff Dill and the stakeholders just don't want to pay for it. The refinery was built in 1929. It was modernized in 1965. That was 52 years ago. To put it into perspective, 52 years ago, the first public demonstration of a color television was held in New York City. 52 years ago, our nation's space program made its first forays beyond our atmosphere with the Gemini program, before the Apollo, before we landed on the moon. In these intervening decades, these two technologies have advanced beyond belief. Meanwhile, in Hawthorne, our neighbors at SpaceX, breathing the same fumes that we're breathing, just this week successfully launched the advanced reusable spacecraft, revolutionizing space travel. At last week's AQMD workshop, one resident suggested that we station a canary at each school surrounding the refinery and then test its lungs when it dies. While rudimentary, it's better than what we currently have in place. If TRC operated with a fraction of the commitment to advancement in technology as other energy-producing corporations, it wouldn't take an EPA report to strong-arm them into necessary maintenance. There would be no waiting for the AQMD, the state and federal law to force them to clean up their act. They would do it on their own, period. Air quality monitoring. Not every time, but most times if there's an unplanned flaring or refinery accident, a shelter in place or unexplained smell, we receive a Torrance alert. Now, contrary to Steve Steech's statement, this is operated by the Torrance PD, and it's not a social media outlet. It's riddled with tech errors, it has delays, and it does not allow for any kind of social-enabled sharing. Sometimes it comes hours after the incident has ended, often with incorrect information and typos. One time, PBF's public affairs team drafted it themselves. But one thing is consistent. In the alert, residents are typically told the following: no off-site impacts. What does that mean? Philip Fine and staff had no idea. And the only way that we can tell what we're breathing is if the AQMD sends a field rep right now from Diamond Bar to the location to take a canister sample or deploy some of their specialized equipment, which doesn't happen as often as we'd like. Torrance Deputy Fire Chief DeMays notes that firefighters can test the air with their handheld Eagle monitors to sense the ground level for some various chemicals, but it's not their responsibility to evaluate air quality. Keep in mind their handheld monitors are at ground level on the refinery premises, and the air that comes off those flare stacks goes up, over, and wherever the wind takes it, blanketing our towns. There's no actual ambient neighborhood air quality monitoring or measuring happening. So why is the public being fed this unhealthy slice of misinformation? No off-site impacts, when the fact is we really don't know. In a similar vein, last summer, the city of Torrance embedded a non-disclosed full-page native ad in their e-newsletter as fact, touting the benefits and safety of HF, which further begs the question, why is the Torrance leadership intent on lulling our community into a false sense of security, which only endangers us more? Now, we know our field rep from the AQMD is doing the best he can, positioned nearly an hour away and with the flares and fires being so unpredictable. But we also urge the AQMD to install the ambient air monitoring systems around the refinery, ideally at nearby schools, to measure for the chemicals most of concern. The canary suggestion, although comical, is actually not funny at all. It's a testament to a community in desperation. It's a real live David and Goliath scenario. The citizens of the South Bay are in fear for their lives and are fighting the very worst of big oil greed with whatever resources we can muster. We, the citizens, are desperate for something to change. The refinery needs to be safe, just like any other business or major operation. This refinery under ExxonMobil and now PBF management is embracing the obsolete, polluting our air, sickening our families, and putting us in danger. The fire department, the tradesmen today, the management, they're talking about all the great incident command training upgrades, the fixes that are to come. There's so many promises, but they've been here already, and why hasn't any of this happened? We're not looking to shut it down, but until this Torrance refinery can become a state-of-the-art, environmentally sound, and stable neighbor in our community, perhaps it should take a time out. And for the remaining time, I'd like to show a short video created by the community, including verified images of days of flaring over this past year.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Derek is coming back with more cards. I'm going to, in order to give everybody an opportunity, how many more cards do we have now? We had 109, approximately 100.
Some people may have left, maybe we should have people raise their hand if they intend to speak, so we get some idea of how many minutes we have by how many people.
Well, I divided it up right now. We're looking at approximately 1 minute in order to be able to get everyone in between the shuffling in and out.
Unless we only have
That's,
60 people in and out. Sounds right.
I think that we should do that in order to, instead of taking another 5 or 10 minutes and asking everybody to show their hands, if we pick up some minutes along the way, we can certainly adjust. But I think in order to be fair to everyone who has come and sat through from 9 o'clock this morning until now, to have an opportunity to say something, I'm going to elect to have, give everybody 1 minute, and then that way.
You should have set enough time for everybody to have their say. What you're doing is wrong. You should have had enough time for everybody to have their say.
Well, what we could do is continue the hearing to next week, and then everybody can come and talk. You want to do that? Sounds, look, you don't have to get up and try and berate the chair because he's trying to do his job. You don't have to say he's being unfair because he's trying to do his job. Let's try and find a way so we can accommodate everybody. So relax. Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we figure out a way here that we can come back next Saturday, figure out how, the cards that are in are the cards of the people who would be allowed to speak today and next Saturday if we came back. So it would only be limited to that testimony. So if we would give the normal 3 minutes testimony, how much time is that? 5 hours. So how much time do we have left today?
45 minutes.
1 hour and 45 minutes.
We have an hour and 45 minutes?
Go to 5?
Yes,
Stay
5.
at 4.
Huh?
Well, it was supposed to all be over at 4, but I think we have to be out of the room at 5, so we could go in an extra hour.
So-
We'd have,
Come back.
So say we went a couple hours today, and so we came back from 9 to 12 on next Saturday. Then
well, we
everybody
have to
gets
make
their
sure
shot.
that the room is going to be available.
Or we'll find a room. If it's not this room, they can find another room, and we'll notify the public. That
Sounds good.
how does that sound to the public?
And- Okay,
Okay.
let's,
So
proceed.
now that all the staff hates me,
Well, you forgot the board members.
and the board members hate me, let's try and figure out how to do this, okay? Because
I can come for maybe an hour.
I think we have 2 different microphones, so I'm going to call out.
but Mr. Chairman, you haven't addressed the situation. Can we come back next week
Unless they'll let them.
so we can give everybody 3 minutes?
We're checking on that right now, Dr. Burke. We may not be able to come back here, but we can find another venue if that's
Yeah,
the
we'll
case.
find another venue. Now,
Check our website.
so what else we should do, I would suggest, not trying to take the chairman's job, is take the number of cards that we have times the time we have left today, so all the people who are going to testify next week don't have to sit around the rest of the day. How's that?
So
Unless they want to stay in
can we,
here.
can we project the names of
Well, they'll know whether or not they got to speak.
we can announce them?
Yeah, we can announce, if it's 20 names times 3 minutes is an hour,
That's, well, we
those are
have
the people who stay.
30 people, that will be, give us 90 minutes, so that's an hour and a half.
Okay, that's great.
So we're talking about the first 30. And I'm going
Got that one.
to read off the first, let's say 10, and 5 on this side and 5 on that side. and that will be in that particular order, okay?
And all those who are left can meet me in my house next Saturday.
So I'm going to say Nadia Levine to my right, Cliff Heist to my left, Gus Torres to my right, Steve McAllen to my left, and Michael Patterson to my right, and Bill Reynolds to my left, Parvez Abbas to my right, Robert Fernandez to my left, Joaquin Santos to my right, and Craig Kessler to my left. That will be the first 10.
It might be 9.
Maybe
No,
9?
10, so we'll
Okay.
see.
You might as well give all that needs to be there, and then the rest know they can go home.
Okay.
You might want to hear what they have to say.
Or they can stay and hear the testimony, but at least they have the option.
They probably
You want
wanna
to
hear
go
it.
Okay, I'll call the names out then for the other
You want 30?
20.
I'm sorry, you holding you up there.
That's up to 30.
Okay. Andrew, what was that? Moraga?
Yeah.
Stephen Goldsmith, Daniel Banis, Anton Chirk, Alex Lafarga, Elaine Wilson, Raymond Ramos, Lydia Bray, Stephen Mendoza, Brittany Roman, Julie Buffinger, Jean Ing, Joel Thuswatcher, Connie, what is that? Sweet, again.
Connie Sullivan.
Sullivan. Christian Sandoval, Jerry O'Connor, Eddie Rivera, Valerie Say, the C, Julian Jimenez, and Ulrich Blattler.
All right. Now,
Okay.
all those people will testify today. Everybody is welcome to stay and listen to their testimony. The balance of the people who put in blue cards, they will testify at 9 o'clock next Saturday somewhere, hopefully here.
Okay, when we finish with that last one, then that will be the end of our session today. Where's the first one? Lydia?
These are the
Well,
Levine.
she's right there.
Levine is the first one.
Okay, but you got Heist over here someplace.
Nadia
Oh,
Levine
okay,
is the
okay.
first one.
Okay. Nadia? Go right ahead.
Can we hold it down for the people who are testifying,
And
please?
for the purpose of the record, would you repeat your name as you began?
Perfect.
Okay?
My name is Nadia Levine. I have been a Torrance resident since January 15th, 2015. We purchased our home, we sold our home in the city of Los Angeles to move to Torrance. We love Torrance. I have 2 small children. My daughter was about to go into kindergarten. And we moved to Torrance because of the schools, the community that is here. It's, as you guys know, it's a great school system. I have lived in the Bay Area, close to refineries. My brother lives in Martinez. I work in El Segundo. I actually work right across the street from the Chevron refinery. Moving to a refinery town didn't scare me. We knew what we were getting into moving to a refinery town. We closed escrow on our house on January 15th of 2015 and moved in. A month and 3 days later, there was the explosion on February 18th. And it was only after that that we learned about modified hydrofluoric acid and the danger that we are in. When we purchased our house, we had to sign documents saying, we understand that there's going to be earthquakes in Torrance. We had to sign the paperwork saying that we know that there's expansive soil in Torrance, something that I didn't know. We had to look it up. I had to Google it. We had to look up what the, everything is. There was nothing in any of the stacks of paperwork that we signed that said that this home we purchased and this community we're moving into is in a kill zone. I live within half a mile of the fence line of the refinery. Both my children are in school within a mile. And the day of the explosion and afterwards, every time we hear sirens coming down Del Almo Boulevard, and every night when I go to bed, I just keep thinking, what the hell did we do to my family? Like, why did we move our family here? It's not something that was known to us. We did our research. We actually looked at the AQMD's website and looked at the preceding years, at the 2012 and 2013 pollution numbers, to make sure that there wasn't anything crazy going on, and we felt comfortable with that. But it's just a risk too great. It's just a risk too great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, you don't have to use all 3 of the minutes, but you can use any portion, all of it, if you wish. Next is Cliff.
Cliff Heiss, longtime resident of the city of Torrance.
Turn his mic up.
Although I am a member of TRAA, I speak today for myself. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you. I heard 2 people this morning compare hydrogen fluoride and sulfuric acid as if they were equally dangerous. I would invite everyone to do their due diligence and investigate these 2 acids. Get on the internet and search for hydrogen fluoride hazards and search for sulfuric acid hazards. You'll find that hydrogen fluoride is much more dangerous than sulfuric acid. Secondly, I'd like to address the Norton report, the first one, and that reference is made to that report authorizing or approving MHF. I think you'll find that the MHF in use in the refinery today is not the same MHF as in the Norton report. The Norton report approved modified hydrogen fluoride as being as safe as sulfuric acid, but only because of the vast amounts of modifier that it contained. Thirdly, we are not opposed to hydrogen fluoride. We're opposed to the massive quantities of hydrogen fluoride in our neighborhood. We recognize that there are many industrial processes that use hydrogen fluoride, but nowhere else will you find hydrogen fluoride in the tens of thousands of pounds like we have in our neighborhood. And I'd like to compliment the PBF and TRC for their openness in coming to this meeting today. I'm sure Mobile would never have done so. And I would also like to thank them for taking the heat for hydrogen fluoride when we know that there are only one of 2 refineries in the South Bay area that use hydrogen fluoride, and the other refineries should be equally on the burner, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gus?
No, my name is Mike Patterson. I'm the business manager of the heat and frost insulators and allied workers in the building trades of Southern California. I've worked in the construction trades for 44 years. The first job I ever did was at the Alcoa Refinery back in 1974. These facilities have come a long way since then. Today I sat here and listened to a man from the EPA saying that he'd give them a 5, 6, or 7 on the risk factor here. That was his opinion. Then later in the afternoon, we found out that PBF has already done a lot of things to fix what the man was talking about. Not once did he mention that. To me, that's a one-sided conversation. We sat in this room today, sitting here keeping our mouths shut, other people sitting here clapping, yelling out loud. I just don't understand it. So with PBF coming in here in this community, taking over this refinery, is way better than what you guys had here before, and they've been proactive in trying to come to these conclusions and fix this thing. So being with the building trades, we are highly skilled people. The first thing we train on is safety, safety, safety. You don't even walk into a refinery without going to a safety orientation. Now we have 20 hours that we go to every 2 years at the member's expense to be able to work in these facilities due to SB 54. So all I would say is that this thing didn't happen in a day. It's not going to get fixed in a day. And let's give them a chance to make it right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael.
My name is Bill Reynolds. I'm a resident of Torrance, and I want to serve you today in your information gathering as a witness to the canvassing that's been going on behalf of TRAA in the neighborhoods of Torrance, and let you know that the ban on MHF has overwhelming support in the neighborhoods of Torrance. And we haven't been spreading disinformation, as that's been alleged. We've been just providing the same information that's been seen on the screens today. The support is just overwhelming. And plus we have about 9,100 signatures on a petition to ban MHF. The other point I want to make is that I don't believe the position that a ban on MHF means poof, all the jobs go away. That's just not credible. And the refinery's position that stonewalling on that position is just not credible. Also, I think we need a third way, which is to make MHF go away and also retain the jobs. I think that's what Janice Hahn and Al Marisucci want to do, and also both members of the Torrance City Council that voted in favor of the MHF ban. We want to have a ban of MHF, but also retain the jobs. And we can have that third way. We just believe it, that we can do it. That third way, however, starts with a ban on MHF. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gus?
Good afternoon. My name is Joaquin Santos. I'm with Laborers Local 1309. We represent hundreds of workers in these refineries throughout Southern California. In particular, PBF has partnered with the building trades, which we are a part of, and along with the other crafts, our members go through a lengthy apprenticeship program. So safety, 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 day in and day out. We're against the ban. We're in support of PBF at the Torrance Refinery, and we hope that our members' livelihoods are not at stake here. Thank you.
Okay. Gus Torres?
I'm Steve McCallum.
You, Steve?
Gus
Okay.
Torres here.
Gus Torres?
He's gone? He's gone? Okay.
Who's supposed to be next?
Then Steve McMillan.
Yes, Steve McCallum. I'd like to briefly share some thoughts about the people, my thoughts about the people with PBF and Torrance Refinery. Since their arrival, Jeff Dill, Betsy Bryant, and many of the other staff members have been active in philanthropy, supporting the YMCA and other nonprofit organizations in our community. For the Y, the support has included not only significant monetary gifts, but volunteerism at events and fundraising campaigns, allowing our wise men to use their property for a Christmas tree lot. And this year, it's stepping up as a presenting sponsor for our golf tournament. The golf tournament is especially important at the Y because all of the funds raised will go to providing financial assistance for kids to go to camp. Without that financial assistance, most of those kids would not be able to go. So on behalf of the Y, I just want to thank Jeff and Betsy and everybody at PBF for their support. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne, lawyers are telling me about scheduling thing for next week. They said we can't get this room. Would you send somebody, because we're not going to need a room this size next week. We're only going to have 30 or 40 people coming to testify.
We're going to have 70.
Huh?
70.
70?
Because we're taking
74.
30 today, but we had 100.
Oh, okay. We're going to have 70, but we can stage them somewhere.
80. He's got some more over there now.
No, I thought that Dr. Parker closed the hearing when he got the other. So,
No more cards.
can you see if we can't find a room here, some that we can get people either, they all don't have to be in this. We can divide them up and say some come at 9 and some come at 10. So we don't need a bigger room. I can't believe that there's no a room available in this hotel that can't hold 100 people next week.
I'll report back to you shortly.
Okay. And if there is no room, tell them I want to buy a piece of this hotel. Huh? I'm sorry? Oh, that's a great idea. So let's see if we can find a location. Yeah, right. Because
Parvez Abbas?
Alex Lafarga.
Alex? Okay, is Mr. Abbas here? Mr. Abbas is not here. Abbas is not here. Robert Fernandez? Fernandez is not here? Okay. Craig Kessler? Okay. The reason I'm calling this is because if they are not here, then they won't have an opportunity to speak next week. And that was the order that I did call the names out in. So it's important that we basically stay true with what we've done. Go right ahead, Mr. Kessler.
Kessler, I am a Torrance resident. I want to remind you, as you again take up Rule 1410 about hydrofluoric acid, that it's 27 years ago that this body adopted a rule that would have at that time phased out hydrogen fluoride. At roughly the same time, the city of Torrance entered into a consent decree or an agreement with the previous owner of the refinery, Mobil Oil, to within a period of 7 years phase it out or actually eliminate it. Mr. Burke, you raised the dispositive question. There is a dispute as to whether or not the modified form of hydrogen fluoride dampens the propensity of hydrogen fluoride to atomize and release a gas-hugging cloud that can escape the refinery and create quite a bit of death and destruction. It either works or it doesn't work. As a resident, it's of no interest to me whether or not it's 98% or 92%. The key is does it work as has been stated. There is substantial evidence that indicates that it does not work as has been stated. Substantial evidence is not proof. As you get into that particular rulemaking process, I would encourage you, again, I agree with you, if the evidence is not forthcoming and the burden is always on the proponent of an idea, and the burden here is to demonstrate that it works. That evidence, if it's not brought to you, I'd agree with you. You have to take a worst-case scenario analysis and proceed inevitably from there. I encourage you to get to that dispositive question. I am personally, and I'm speaking for myself, I am very much a believer in allowing businesses and industries an appropriate amount of time to respond to any changes that are mandated by government. But I want to remind you, unfortunately, many persons in this room, all of them in the blue shirts, Mr. Dill and his crew at PBF, are all victims perhaps of something, but so are the residents here, and that is a problem that all of us thought was going to be addressed in roughly 7 years, 27 years ago. Here we are, perhaps back at the beginning, and the rest of it is really commentary. I'm not going to use all my time. Thank you very much.
I got to tell you, I have been mystified by that consent decree. Dr. Parker and I both have been trying to dig out exactly what that consent decree said and why it was set aside and why it wasn't readopted. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But we agree with each other.
As someone who lived here at the time, I agree with you. But now we're in 2017.
Yeah,
let's do our best
time.
Moving forward.
Yeah, it's a different time. But
Thank you.
I'd like to know what happened at least. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Daniel Banis?
No,
Yes, no, in order.
My name's Daniel Banis. I'm a member of 1309 Laborers Union. I'm born and raised right here in the South Bay. I'm here today to voice my support for the Torrance Refinery, and it's a part of the community whether you like it or not. You know, it's been here a long time. It provides a lot of work. provide safe, reliable, good-paying jobs for Torrance residents, South Bay residents like me. I urge you to stand with the proud employees, union members, and Torrance residents protecting this vital source for our community, you know? Pretty much it gives a lot of work to a lot of us, and it's safe, it's a good place.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony.
Stephen Goldsmith? Stephen?
Goldsmith?
He had me call, he said be back in 30 minutes or so.
If he gets back before we end, I guess.
Andrew? Yes.
Went from the back of the line to the front of the line.
I like that.
That poor lady's been standing, she's been number one for 5 minutes.
My name's Andrew Mayorga. I'm a member of Laguna Local 1309. I'm just here to express my support of the Torrance Refinery. I'm a third generation Laguna member. My bloodline has about 100 years in this industry, and opportunities like this that the refinery gives to the community is not just a job, it's more a career that impacts generations. It's unfortunate that we might have to make a decision based on a fear factor. It's a what if, you know, and I get it, but at the end of the day, the harsh reality is if we don't have an opportunity like this for us, that we do what we do, it will not be a what if, it will be we are going to be hurting, and as a community and as membership, and it's a loss and an impact on our families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anton? Chung? Oh, Churg, I'm sorry.
I'm Anthony Churg. I'm one of the scientists who helped Sally Hayati on the work with the refinery. And I've sent you my analysis of the MHF physical chemistry and why I am almost 98.9% sure that it was a fraud in that test. And I would certainly want to also speak to Jeff Dill's statement that it was 8% and that Sally Hayati's number is a scare tactic or some kind of modified facts. I did the calculation sitting here, and 8% by weight is 1%, 1.4% by moles, so it's even less molecule by molecule than we thought. So that's not the point. I'm also very sympathetic to a lot of the nuances of the conversion, and I think that the main point here is that whether you rate the refinery as 5, 6, or 10, I think the community thinks it's a 10, and we're very, very worried that the refinery is going to blow up, and we can't diddle in that regard. So my urgency is for very, very strict safety controls. And you know, the rest of what I had to say is in the report, and I don't want to take everybody else's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shaw. Alex Lafarga?
That's me.
Okay.
I'm Alex Lafarga. I'll be brief. I work with Labor's Local 1309. I'm a business representative. And so we understand my position. There are two things that are paramount with me and my membership, and that's jobs and safety. The latter doubly so because I've spent 90% of my lifetime living within a half-mile distance of refineries. So I think that's very important for myself, my son, my family. But I do oppose this ban, and I oppose this ban for this reason. For any successful action, you need two things. You need planning and you need execution. And what I think this is a case of is execution without planning. What we have are a lot of people who say we have processes that may work and may replace this. We haven't seen that actuality yet. I've also heard from a lot of people, especially speaking to me in my position, telling me this will not impact jobs. We are looking for ways that this will not impact jobs. Looking for ways that we think won't impact jobs is not a reality. That is not a plan for my membership, for 3,000 members that live in the South Bay area work in the South Bay area. The hundreds that work in the refinery, those are families that I'm going to have to look at that can't pay bills, that can't pay mortgages, that lose insurance, that are going to have serious impact if those jobs aren't available. So what I would like to see is maybe something revisited that addresses both the safety and has a solid put-in-place plan for those jobs and for the processes to be replaced. Not hypotheticals, but concrete plans. And basically, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. Elaine Wilson?
Hi, I'm Elaine Wilson. My home is located 6 yards from the southeast fence line of PBS Torrance Refinery. I am not a member of a political party or organization. I have provided documentation for what I'm about to say, and Mr. Tasopoulos has those. First, I'm sorry, I'm very nervous. Notice of Administrative Penalty Assessment and Secretary's Order from the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control. Delaware City Refining Company / PBF Energy for violation of Secretary's Order and illegal shipment of petroleum. Date posted Friday, March 10, 2017, $1,500,000. Again, that is in the hands of the SCAQMD. On Tuesday, March 7th, Torrance City Council meeting. I was stunned when Council Member Rizzo stated that he favored state, county, and city of Torrance financial help for PBF Torrance Refinery to make changes at the facility. Quote, that would benefit all parties concerned. Really? A private entity feeding at the trough of taxpayers on top of publicly stated, quid pro quo, publicly stated, you scratch my back, I'll scratch my policy of city government as stated at a city council meeting. Next, United States Security and Exchange Commission, and I thought it was interesting that on Monday, the 27th and March 28th, the evening of the City of Torrance meeting to address the refinery, the PBF Holding Company held a PowerPoint presentation for investors, and you have that as well. I will only relate to 3 pages of 22 pages for investors. Banks like B of A, Wells Fargo, and JP Morgan Chase at 10% stock investment. Our investment, PBF, 7 of 22, a compelling investment. Page 8 of 22, attractive asset diversification and growth, and a map which includes the Torrance Refinery, which they are swearing they are going to close down. Is it fraud that they're telling these people to invest in? Big banks don't like to lose. Page 9 of 22, implementing system-wide commercial optimization. I mean, it goes on and on.
But your time is over.
I'm sorry. Thank you so much, and thank you.
No, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you
It was
for
excellent.
listening.
It was
Thank you.
excellent.
Next speaker will be Ramos. He's not here. Lydia Bray. Lydia is not here?
Yeah, no, that's Lydia.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I am here.
Yeah.
So I'd like to let everybody know that for nearly 60 years I've been a resident here in Redondo Beach in Torrance, California. And I'm not amongst those who live in fear of the refinery. I can see the flare from outside my upper story window, so I'm relatively close. I'm actually more fearful when I'm walking across Hawthorne Boulevard to get to Trader Joe's. I think the refinery has put into place safety, and when I do see the flare going off, I know an incident has happened, and I accept that, and I'm happy for the safety that we have from that system that's there. The refinery knows that we need more safety precautions, and they're working on that. I also am very thankful that we're working with trade unions. I have a nephew in Ironworkers Local 433 that's working at the refinery, and so those skilled workmen that are knowledgeable and have all of the skills that they need to improve the refinery are on site now. On a positive note, I also want to let you know that I'm a Torrance Unified School District teacher, and we partner with the refinery for innovation education grants. I happen to receive one of those grants this year that will be for STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. My students are the recipients of a great gift. I have the future engineers that will be coming through this refinery and making advancements. I also have the opportunity to work with Torrance Mounted Posse, and we take our horses through the generosity of the refinery, and they're providing land for us to have our horses there, and I provide education to many students, and I have for nearly 17 years. So I think our students are benefiting from the refinery and their commitment to education, and it's my expectation that they will continue to make improvements and increase the safety and environmental friendliness of this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Stephen Mendoza.
How you doing? My name is Stephen Mendoza. I'm a 26-year member of the Laborers Union. I am a proud member of the Building Trades Union. I believe that these refineries are safer these days than they were yesterday. I support the refinery, and I do not support the ban. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brittany Roman.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Roman. I've been a resident of the city of Torrance most of my life. I'm here because I am the current captain of the Torrance Mounted Posse. For everyone who is not familiar with us, we are a small, non-profit, charitable horse riding club and the official goodwill ambassadors of the city of Torrance. The Torrance Mounted Posse originally started as the Torrance Mounted Police in 1953 as a branch of the police department. When the city of Torrance became less rural and the need for a mounted unit diminished, the group was formed into the Torrance Mounted Posse to include civilian members. In the early 1980s, the posse and the Torrance Police Department severed official ties, and we became incorporated as a non-profit charitable organization. No longer being part of the official city workforce, the posse needed a new home, and the refinery opened its doors to us. For over 30 years, not only have our horses called the Refinery Land home, but so has our club, our members, and our families. With the support of the refinery, the Torrance Mounted Posse has been able to continue to give back to the community that we love in so many different ways throughout the last 6.5 decades. But we are not the only group of the refinery supports. ExxonMobil and now Torrance Refining Company annually supports 42 different charitable organizations within our community. I understand that the Torrance Refining Company needs to gain the community's trust, but I ask you to also keep in mind how much the refinery is a part of our community. From the hundreds of jobs to the tax revenue the city of Torrance receives, but also what they give to our local community charitable groups and schools. We at the Torrance Mounted Posse are extremely grateful for the support that ExxonMobil has given us in the past and the continued support from PBF and the Torrance Refining Company. I have full confidence that the Torrance Refining Company is doing everything in their power to make sure that this refinery is safe for not only their employees, but for all of us in the community, and that they will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Julie Bowfinger.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Boffinger. I have lived in Torrance, the city of Torrance, and I have worked at the Torrance Refinery for 25 years now. During that time, I've held a variety of jobs at the refinery, including things like project leader for a multi-million-dollar project that installed clean fuels facilities at the refinery that helped reduce emissions. I worked over a decade as an engineer in the Alky unit, helping to install, start up, and operate the MHF facility that has been discussed today. I have helped a project that installed SEMS and reclaim equipment that helped with proper emissions monitoring and reporting. I've participated in hazard reviews, HAZOPs, risk assessments, so I know firsthand the amount of detail, the design, the science, the engineering, the hard work that goes into ensuring the community safety and our coworkers' safety. Now I work as a supervisor of employees that continue that hard work every day in everything that we do at the refinery. I would not live a mile from the refinery. I would not work there as long as I have if I did not know my family of coworkers were looking out for my safety, my coworkers' safety, and my city's safety as their #1 priority. Knowing what we do, it's hard to hear what's being said. It doesn't represent what we are, who we are, and what we do at the refinery every day. Hearing the flare just being portrayed as a negative instead of the safety system that it is and is designed to do. Hearing MHF touted as fake science and fraud, knowing that it is as safe or safer than sulfuric acid, the alternative being proposed. Not hearing a mention of all the positive comments we get from regulators, from agency visitors, on our performance and what we do and our professionalism. I ask you to allow the rulemaking process to follow its normal course of action and don't predetermine an outcome. I ask you to consider the facts and disregard the misinformation. And I also ask you to listen to me, not as a refinery employee alone, but as a Torrance community member. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ji Ing.
Torrance resident for 37 years. One thing stuck out in the morning presentations was the idea of doing a timeline for a disaster. For any type of medical or other disaster, the golden hour is the first hour. I would think it would help allay a lot of citizens' concerns if all the regulatory agencies would go and put 60 lines, one for every minute of the first hour of an off-site consequence analysis as registered with the EPA, 5,200 pounds MHF in 10 minutes. What will every organization do minute by minute? What's your plan? And then you can go, you can even do it as an emergency planning activity, as a theoretical activity. You will find where the holes are in the system and how you can do better coordination year after year as you go through that exercise to figure out where the holes are. And if you say, well, no, the plan is great, here it is, here's all 60 minutes, you're all safe, that would go and help us so much to see that all the coordination and all that process actually works in a scenario. Number two, I think since this covers lots of other things besides MHF, the catalyst dust went for miles in February 18th. You've done an elemental analysis, like saying HCN is made of hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. Each one is innocuous and part of life. I've put a lot of paper to you guys. Please read it. I think you should do an independent study, a lot more study of that catalyst dust. It is far less innocuous than the elemental analysis shows. Number three, HCN. Have you thought of regulating HCN? As temperatures go up in refineries, HCN amount goes up. That's another very poisonous material that I think should be put under control. Number four, looking at the refinery fire. I looked at that fire for 45 minutes. People said, oh, it only burned for only 45 minutes. You know how much damage you can do in 45 minutes? That's a very long fire. And it made it clear to me that the refinery always vaunts their fire suppression system. But I don't go for a fire suppression canister in the red bottle. I go for a fire extinguishment system. So I strongly encourage you to require the refinery to add a fire extinguishment system to their fire suppression system. And finally, the idea from the Bay Area that, every time you have something go wrong and you fix it, make 3 other improvements. I'd like the AQMD to try to implement that kind of rule to help the population. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ying. The next person is Joel Thuswachter.
It's Thurwachter.
Oh,
My name is Joel Thurwachter. I'm a business representative for Local 12 Operating Engineers. I represent the operating engineers that work in the Torrance Refinery and live in Torrance and the surrounding area. Since PBF Energy has taken over the Torrance Refinery, they have been updating and improving the facility to make sure the refinery is operating safely. Local 12 asks you not to predetermine the outcome by imposing a ban or phasing out of MHF. We ask you to allow the rulemaking process to take its normal course of action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Connie
Sullivan.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for holding this hearing today. I learned a lot of things, and here are some of them. I learned that there's a solid acid catalyst alkylation unit operating in the UK right now. That was news to me. I learned that a conversion to sulfuric acid or a solid acid catalyst would be in the $120 to $160 million range to convert. And putting that in perspective, the electrostatic precipitator that exploded on February 18th, 2015 cost $160 million, $61 million to repair. I learned that an advantage of switching from hydrofluoric alkylation to sulfuric acid or solid acid catalyst reduces a refinery's insurance premium. So the insurance community, the underwriters, think that it's much more dangerous to use hydrofluoric acid. And I learned that it takes more than 5 years for the findings of a regulatory report to be finalized, and I think that's ridiculous. I also think that a decade or more to wait for the very best conversion technology to come online after the community has waited 27 years is also ridiculous. 27 years! Sorry.
What'd you say?
She was just repeating the 27 years that I said. So I call upon PBF to work with the AQMD, state legislature, and any other appropriate agencies to get this conversion done. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
Thank you very much. Christian Sandoval. Christian? Gary O'Connor.
Hi, I'm Jerry O'Connor. I'm a 36-year resident of the South Bay. And I first want to thank you for having this hearing here in Torrance, where we could all attend and engage with you. And secondly, I want to thank you for your, what I consider to be open-minded yet somewhat aggressive questioning of some of the panelists tonight. Particularly, I thought that was exemplified with the EPA representative. The continual attempt to get him to define a time frame within which they would come to more firm conclusion and take action was much appreciated, even though we heard no answers. But I want to just give you very briefly a personal example of the morning of the explosion. My mother lived the last few years of her life a couple of blocks away from the refinery. I went the morning of the explosion to pick her up to go to a routine doctor's appointment. I happened to be driving down Del Amo Boulevard, headed right for the refinery, when I arrived to find a big ball of flame in the sky and the emergency vehicles just beginning to arrive. I got to my mother's house a couple of blocks away to pick her up, and her house was covered in an undefined white substance. And her caregivers were out sweeping the driveway already, unknowing what they were putting themselves into. I scooped her out of there, brought her to her doctor's appointment, didn't return her for a day or two until we knew what was going on, except to run back and give them all gas masks, because we just didn't know. The information flow was non-existent. That's part of the problem, but that's a reaction. That's not addressing the cause. And what we need to do is address the cause. And we know what happened here. And we heard PBF and many of the refinery workers frankly bad-mouthing ExxonMobil. Their maintenance and management programs ran that refinery into the ground. PBF bought it at a deep, deep discount. And I'm not sure to this day if they knew what they were getting into, but clearly they bought into a mess. And they are attempting to correct it now. But I'll make a quick analogy. If a city needed to buy a new bus, and instead of spending $100,000, they went out and spent $20,000 on a used one, would they fill it with people to drive around town while they figured out how to fix it? I don't think so. But the path forward kind of says it all, what we heard from PBF. If I can pull it up here quickly, the path forward that they define has no quantifiable terms in it whatsoever. They talk about being committed to minimizing the flaring. What's minimizing mean? 1 or 2 less flares every week? We are working to resolve electrical reliability issues. We will continue to improve the safety systems in the ALKI unit. We are fully committed to working through the AQM rulemaking process. Well, yeah, they're legally required to do that. Achieve safe, reliable, and environmentally responsible operations. Those are all terms that we all have our own definitions for. Again, I want to thank you for being here today and for taking action in an urgent form. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eddie Rivera? Is Eddie here? Valerie C.
Hi, my name is Valerie Shea, and I live in the South Bay. I do work at the PBF refinery as an environmental engineer, and I work closely with the inspectors of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. What I have to say here is, first of all, I'd like to point out an analogy that I had shared earlier this week, which was if I had a lump on my breast, I would not go and see a plastic surgeon for a recommendation. I would go and see an expert in the field of cancer, which would be an oncologist. What I see here is a lot of the public's fears and concerns are based on misinformation and not based on the right experts. Like the plastic surgeon, these self-proclaimed experts have multiple advanced degrees, often from Ivy League universities, making claim to know more about the refinery operations and safety risks. Somehow these experts have convinced the community, who have now, for one, overlooked the professional recommendations and analysis of independent experts. They've also overlooked recommendations and analysis of government officials who have worked closely with the refinery for decades. And of course, the people who work in the refineries. So I urge for the AQMD board and the public also to consider the source of the public's concerns and to understand the whole story. Yes, HF acid is a dangerous hazard, but so are the chemicals that live under your kitchen sink and driving your car to work every day. But we do not ban cars from the roads, and we don't force everyone to fly to work because it's safer. We mitigate the risk, we mitigate the hazard with seatbelts, airbags, traffic regulations. Some of these are defined by government agencies through careful evaluation of each system. Banning MHF is not the answer. I'd like to also address, some of the community. They don't quite understand why the people from the refinery are we feel so safe working there. And like a car, we know what maintenance we've done on it. We trust in our seatbelts, our airbags that they're going to deploy, our monitoring systems that tell us when the gasoline tank is empty. So all of this stuff we know and we see every day. The community does not. and I understand their fears, but I just urge that you allow for the normal rulemaking process because that process of, really looks at, I think I've made my point here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Julian Jimenez?
Julian Jimenez, labor representative of Local 1309. Been in the refinery since 1979, so I know that safety is their priority. First day they took my aluminum hard hat. I wasn't happy about that. But I'll stand here and I'll say that safety is their priority, and I support Torrance PBF employees and my union brothers and sisters. All I can say is let us do our job that we've been trained to do. Safety first.
Thank you. Ulrich?
I wasn't here. I came back. I had to be away for a few minutes.
Okay,
Stephen
yeah.
Goldsmith.
Ehrlich, Blattler? Go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Ulrich Blattler. I'm a resident of Torrance.
Here.
All the blue shirts here, we always hear how safe everything is. Safety, 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 that's the mantra of PBF. Yet, we have problems all the time. Software glitches, power outages, something explodes, another fire there, and so on. And this is only under normal circumstances. Just imagine, all these things happen under normal circumstances. But there are many things that are completely out of their control. We have earthquakes here. We can have terrorist attacks or cyber attacks. Nobody would know what happens if we have a, let's say, 7.5 earthquake here. This would rip their pipes apart, the power would go down. They have no idea what would happen then. If they have 250,000 pounds of HF in our neighborhood, if that gets released, people get killed. Less than 1 mile away from that unit are 2 schools. One of them is North High. My daughter goes there. My son went there when the explosion happened. I had a picture sent from him while I was working in Oxnard at that day, and he asked me, what should I do? Do you see the cloud here? They had no idea what to do. I said, run, but they didn't let him. People were scrambling. They didn't know what to do. And if there would be an HF release, what would they do? They would go in their classrooms and would try to find some duct tape and some plastic to cover the vents which are on the ceiling. You cannot even shelter in place. Nobody knows what to do if there is a real HF release. And the refinery does not tell us. They don't want to tell us. They never come up with anything that addresses this problem. Earthquakes, cyber attacks. You might know about Stuxnet, what happened in Iran when they got rid of their centrifuges. They attack PLC units and so on. You never know what's going to happen. Or if somebody flies an airplane into one of these settler tanks, what will happen then? I'm asking you personally, what will happen then? Please remember that. One quick thing, and this is mind-boggling to me. We heard before about that they changed over units in the UK. We were always told by PBF that there is no way a unit could be changed to another safer alternative. Now, the bosses of PBF are asking, oh, could you please give us some information? Give me a break. Do your homework. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much. Stephen Goldsmith.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this process of adopting a rule to ban hydrofluoric acid. And from my understanding, and I'm not familiar with all the details of regulation, I don't have an advanced degree from an Ivy League school. But from my understanding, the discussion is not whether to have a ban, a rule regulating HF, but what that rule should be. And I'm from the Torrance Refinery Action Alliance. I was asked on that day, and that's how I got involved. I live in Torrance. And I think that it shouldn't be what my feelings are, or the feelings of the refinery workers, which are equally valid to my feelings. It's about the science and about, and if anybody goes to the website of Torrance Refinery Action Alliance, which is, I think, called safetorrancerefinery.org, you'll find documents from the refining industry, from the government, nothing that we've created, but it's based on other people's tests and all of those things. So we think you should rely on that science, and not so much the feelings of the community or the feelings of the refinery workers, and particularly the assurances. I personally feel, having experience, I was on the, of ExxonMobil, I was on the community advisory panel. And they regularly told us about how safe, and safety was #1, and they sent things to our homes. Safety is terrific. We really do so many different things for safety. And then it blew up. And I'm sure most of the workers who have testified were at the plant that day, and I'm sure they didn't do any, from what I understand, they didn't do anything wrong. So that, things happen. And the woman who made that same speech at the city council meeting, tearing down the, credentials of people that get degrees from Ivy League schools, I think that's kind of a plus. Those are the best schools in the United States, or among the best. Of course, UCLA and USC are terrific too. And the last thing is that this plant could be run perfectly, and a plant in Germany or in the UK or in Indonesia or Turkey has an HF event and 1,000 or 10,000 people are killed or injured, this plant's going to have to close tomorrow. Just the uproar would be so great. And so this really is what putting people's jobs in jeopardy, is leaving this chemical in our community, and we believe it's got to go.
Thank you very much. Bobby Glickman.
Hi, I'm a resident of Redondo Beach. I support the ban of MHF. One comment is that I was very concerned by the comments by the Torrance fire about looking at the proprietary information about MHF and making references to science. Science needs to be public, it needs to be independently replicated, and it needs to be peer-reviewed. And I believe by definition, proprietary information cannot qualify as science, and because it cannot be peer-reviewed, it cannot be independently replicated. So I'm very concerned that a public body would consider as evidence proprietary information that cannot be independently replicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you very much, Robbie. I'd like to thank all the people who spoke today and the panel members, staff. It's certainly been a long day. We've been here now for almost 7.5 hours. Some of us who got here a little earlier have been here probably 8 hours. I think we've only taken one break other than that of lunch. So thank you for the endurance that you've had, and we're going to adjourn today's meeting, and our council is telling us that we have to do it in an official manner as it relates to the Brown Act. So to make sure that I read every if and and but, I'm going to let him do the reading. So everybody pay close attention, because it's where we're going to be next week. Kurt, go ahead.
This meeting is continued to the City of Torrance City Hall Chambers located at 3031 Torrance Boulevard. The meeting will begin at 9 a.m. on Saturday, April 8th, 2017. At that time, the committee will receive comments from members of the public who submitted a speaker's card before the closing of the hearing today and who were not called on here to comment. Thank you.
We will convene back, and I think that we will probably have one of our board members that won't be able to be here, but it will all be recorded, and staff will be here. And
Who can't go?
Huh?
Who can't go?
Mrs. Mitchell.
Judy?
Judy. But we will see everybody next Saturday at 9 o'clock at the City Hall. Thank you very much for coming.